necks bent. The general staff officers pulled the Emperor down and then flung themselves to the ground. "Look to the lieutenant," the Emperor called to the breathless doctor. In the meantime, the gunfire had once more abated, and while the cadet replacement officer stood in front of the platoon and announced in clear tones, "I'm taking over the command," Franz Josef and his escort picked themselves up. The medical people carefully strapped the lieutenant onto the stretcher, and they all departed in the direction of the regimental headquarters, where a snow-white tent housed the nearest dressing station. Trotta's left collarbone was smashed. The bullet, which had come to rest against his shoulder blade, was removed in the presence of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, to the sound of unearthly screams from the wounded man, whom pain had roused from unconsciousness. 4 weeks later, Trotta was much better. By the time he returned to his regimental headquarters in southern Hungary, he had been promoted to the rank of captain, awarded the highest military decoration, the Order of Maria Theresa, and ennobled. Henceforth his name was Captain Joseph Trotta of Sipolia. It was as if he had received a strange, new, fabricated life in exchange for his own. Every night before going to sleep, and every morning after getting up, he repeated his new name and rank to himself, and stepped in front of the mirror to assure himself that his face still looked the same. Between the clumsy intimacy with which his comrades tried to overcome the gulf that a baffling fate had suddenly created between them, and his own vain attempts to meet the world with the same innocence as heretofore, the ennobled Captain Trotta seemed to lose his equilibrium. He felt as though he had been condemned to spend the rest of his life in borrowed boots on a slippery floor, welcomed by outlandish greetings and the subject of furtive glances. His grandfather had been a simple peasant, his father a sergeant in the Pay Corps and then a gendarmerie sergeant in the southern marches of the monarchy. Ever since losing an eye in a fight with Bosnian smugglers, he had lived on his military pension as a watchman in the grounds of Laxenburg Castle, feeding the swans, trimming the hedges, protecting the laburnum in season, and later the elderflower from the depredations of lawless hands, and on mild nights removing the courting couples from the park benches where they had gone to take advantage of the dark. The rank of a common or garden infantry lieutenant seemed natural and appropriate to the son of a sergeant. But to an ennobled and decorated captain who went around in the strange, almost eerie aura of imperial favour, as in a golden cloud, his father had suddenly become estranged, and the measured love that the heir felt for the old man seemed to call for different behaviour, new forms between the father and son. The captain hadn't seen his father for 5 years, but even so, once a fortnight, each time the unchanging roster took him to barrack duty, he had written the old man a short letter, in the guardroom, by the sparse flickering light of an official candle. Once he'd inspected the sentries, written the hours of their relief, and in the column "Other Incidents" entered a clear and energetic "None," as though to ward off even the remotest possibility of there ever being such a thing. The letters were as formulaic as any military pass or official communication, written on yellow, fibrous octavo sheets with the greeting "Dear Father" on the left, leaving a space of 4 fingers' breadth at the top of the sheet and 2 in the margin. They began with a brief statement of the good health of the writer, continued with a hope of similar on the part of the recipient, and concluded with the unvarying expression, in a paragraph of its own on the bottom right, "Respectful greetings, your loyal and thankful son, Joseph Trotta, Lieutenant." Now, even with a different rank and a new roster, how could one possibly alter this accepted form, calculated to last for the whole of a soldier's life, and introduce into the standard sentences unusual communications of circumstances to which one had still to grow accustomed oneself, and whose full import one was yet to grasp? On that quiet evening following his recovery, when Captain Trotta first sat down to discharge the duty of correspondence at the table comprehensively notched and scratched by the artistry and the pocket-knives of bored men, he saw that he would never be able to get beyond the greeting, "Dear Father."